This is what the wheel should look like after stage 2. This is the wheel mounted in the mandrel before machining. You can see that rough edge. If I zoom in a little bit, you see the rough edge. This point here, this is the second turning, and it's concentric with the axle hole. This was the first turning we did. It was a ridge so that we could hold it in the 3-jaw chuck. And of course the back has been machined and nice and flat, so everything has been referenced from the back, this point, and now we're going to reference everything from this second ridge, which we know is concentric with the hole in the middle, which has been drilled and reamed. Wheel is set up on a special mandrel, and first thing we have to do is put it in the 4-jaw chuck and center it. And we center it with that second cut rim that we made on the second stage where we drilled the hole, and we know that that rim is concentric with the hole, so that everything we're going to reference from this point now. First off, we'll set this feeler test gauge so that it's even with this bottom jaw, this horizontal jaw, and I'm going to set the gauge to 0 for the first, and then we're going to crank it around all the way 180 degrees and see how much out we are. We're out by 10 thousandths, so all we need to do now is move it by 5 thousandths. Because we're going to move it halfway. I know my arm is probably in the way for this, and you can't really see the test gauge, but it's reading 5. Now we're going to set it at 0. In theory, that jaw is at 0, and the 180 degrees should be at 0. It's not quite yet. It's 3 thousandths, so now we're going to adjust it a little bit more. And adjust it about 1.5. This needs to be repeated several times until you get it exactly right. I'll reset this at 0 again. Now we'll check the 180 degrees, and it's reading 0. Now it's a simple process of taking the jaw that's at 90 degrees and just adjusting that right to 0. And with any luck, we should be pretty darn close to having this piece almost centered completely in the 4-jaw chuck. You can see this is a, do it a lot of times. Okay, now we're reading 0, 180 degrees, so we should be at 0. Now we're going to check the other jaws, which probably have gone out a little bit. We're at a plus 1,000th, and we're at, oh, not quite minus 1,000th, so we'll just make a very fine adjustment here. Get this back to about to 0. And that's its reading 0. 180 degrees, and it's just about not quite 0. Each tightening of these jaws, we're distorting the mandrel just a little bit, and each distortion is going to have its own. Alright, so each jaw now is reading almost 90 degrees, almost 0. That one's almost 0, almost 0. So we're pretty darn good. So at this point now we're right at 0. First thing we're going to do is cut off the little piece of material that was left over from the first pass and the second pass. This outside rim is concentric with the hole in the middle, and this little piece of extra material is going to be cut off. That forms where the outside edge of the flange will be. So that's our next operation. And as you sight down the wheel, you can see that, oh, it's running just as true could be if you've done everything right. Even though everything else looks like it's wobbling like crazy, the wheel is what's really perfectly centered. Next view of us cutting that little piece of metal off of the wheel, and I think should be able to see it. I'll get the arm in the way. The next part of this operation, we're going to form the flange, and that needs to be 1.5 millimeters thick. We'll do this right to the root of the tire, the first pass, which will give us a flange that's about just a shade under 2 millimeters deep as well. Yeah, we'll check that. How thick it is. And right now this is running 1.9 millimeters, so we just have to go a little bit further. What we'll do is lock the carriage. See? 0.8. 0.7. 1.59, which is pretty darn close. The rest of this I do by eye. There really isn't anything fancy here other than moving this right into the root and just cranking this out. By the way, this is set at 3 degrees, which is a thread angle that we're looking for. Put that right into the root of the and that takes care of the tire. Make sure we skim the whole thing. So now the tire tread, this part here, which is perfectly straight from the second operation, now at a 3-degree angle. And we formed the beginning of the flange. The rest of this, as I said, I do by eye and by hand. So the first thing we'll do is we'll round off the back of the flange with a file, and we'll clean up the thread with the file, break the surface in the front, create a little round there, and then I use a much smaller file to get in here and do the front part of the flange. Suppose if you had a tool that was designed by a machinist to do this, you could probably do this much better in one pass, but this really works very good. Gives you good enough results. And we are done. That's all it takes to machine the treads on a wheel. This is the finished wheel in the mandrel. after being machined.